Hey, good people. I enjoyed quite a few dozen responses to the recent video on the um, idea that budget guitars can challenge brand name guitars. And a lot of them sort of corroborated what I was saying in that video, even though the title was ironic. Um, a lot of people corroborated that, including two or three of you that do a lot of repair work, whether that's with a shop. And one or two luthiers as well checked in with me to say that they had found that to be the case too. Not with all budget brands, but there are, they find budget brands that with good setup work and maybe the odd upgrade, they found guitars that really can punch their weight in comparison, not to the top guitars of the world, but maybe some branded guitars a few tiers up. I think there was a one reference to Gretsch guitars, the lower was it electromagnetic? I can't remember the exact brand that they were talking about or model that we're talking about. But yeah, I found the same thing, that a lot of guitars that you can find in budget companies can be set up or even upgraded to rival guitars $200, $300, $400 more, maybe not 1,000 more, but certainly the next couple of tiers up. And I have one in my arms right now, this 7-string from Kozart, which I did a lot of work on. I was a little bit skeptical of Kozart for a while because I probably had 6 or 7 of their guitars and then stopped buying them because of various problems, but then went back to this after a couple of years and found it looks to me like they've improved quite a bit their product, and this one is quite a nice example of a guitar that can be upgraded. And I've had a few 7 strings that are let's say well-known brands in the Ibanez Jackson realm, maybe not top dollar ones, but to where this could rival some of those, and some of those are probably 100, 200 more. So this is one case in point. So yeah, I did get a lot of corroboration, even from people who are fairly active in the repair world, saying that. This has been an ongoing process for a while. I did work for a number of years, first of all in a bowed strings shop, an old-fashioned shop where we did a lot of restoration work on double basses, cellos, violins, that kind of thing. And of course that is a longer tradition that goes back to the 17th century. And violins and the violin family instruments that are made in Italy and then Germany and other parts of Europe have a very valuable provenance, if you like, a very steep provenance in a long-standing tradition. And some of those violins are the best violins ever made. And it took a while for contemporary makers from other countries, particularly Asian countries, to gain respect. I remember in the early days, let's say the mid-90s, when you started to see an influx of Chinese and other Asian-made instruments, a lot of which were substandard. There was a marked bias against Asian-made instruments. There still is, but it's not nearly as pronounced as it was back then. And then you started to see, coming into the shop, some examples of really, really fine making from China. I remember one, a cello that came in from I forget his first name, but a violin maker from China named Chen. That was an absolutely wonderful instrument and had all the hallmarks of very fine making from European countries. Great woods, great joinery, great attention to detail, really nice varnish. And I think that industry, the bowed strings industry, sort of went through this battle a little bit earlier. And in the guitar world, it was always, back in the 70s, it was always the Japanese guitars that were sort of the junk guitars, and now those are collectible. And now, we're sort of bashing on China, and people are slowly coming around. I did have somebody respond saying that these companies that I was talking about were all not real companies. They were all rebranders and stuff like that. And I set them straight. I said some of them are. There are some companies that are purely distributors. They buy guitars made by other people and they just rebrand them. That exists, yes, you're right. But not all companies are like that. Some have OEM guitars made to their specs. Some have small factory outlets themselves. Some make guitars for other companies and then make a small amount with their own brand, like IYV, as we know. So really, you can't have a blanket statement. All Chinese makers are not similar. All budget companies are not similar. It's incorrect, refutably incorrect to say that, because there are a lot of different striations of company models across budget companies, and we've talked about that quite a bit on this particular channel. I still meet every once in a while. I still meet people in guitar shops and even luthiers that still have quite a bit of bias towards certain companies. I've found that sometimes these are targeted towards the very, very top echelon of companies. For instance, people who hold Martin or Taylor guitars to be the holy grail of the acoustic guitar world are often talking about the very top models of those companies, which are going to be hard to compete with, in your sub $200 guitar for sure, and nobody expects them to either. But Martin and Taylor also make some lesser models, the little Taylors, little Martins, and do have put out budget guitars over the years that are of a lesser standard as well. Same with companies like Ibanez, Alvarez, even Fender. Just because they are highly reputable brand names, it doesn't mean that every single model they put out is held to the same standard. So, often when people say, this guitar I bought for $200 on Amazon rivals my Fender, we shouldn't assume that that's a 52 Telecaster. They might be talking about, a Mexican Fender or one of the Player series Fenders, or, one of the less reputable periods of Fender or Gibson, perhaps, like the Norlin era of Gibson. So, blanket statements are always problematic, I think, in this business. And people are sort of moving away from it and understanding that there's a lot of complexity and nuance about the way certain companies do business, and you can't really tar them all with the same brush. But you still run into it. I mean, I still see videos from guys that have their own shops, and they swear by 3 or 4 models, and they put down, any aspiring up-and-comers. And a lot of times it's because their shops are dealers for those particular brands that they espouse, so they have a business interest. We all know guitar channels where a certain shop only really highlights the brands that they are actually carrying or distributing through that shop. So it's not entirely objective, is it? There's always, sometimes some business interest underpinning the opinion, if you like. But yeah, I got a really interesting response, and I just wanted to say that for the most part, I think people are coming around to the fact that the guitar business is fairly open-ended. There's a lot of overpriced stuff in the upper echelons. There's a lot of companies not really punching their own weight or sort of surviving off of old, past days of glory. And they're up-and-coming companies, some of which have really well-priced, well-made, upgradable types of guitars, and others maybe not so. Maybe they're deserving of the some of the criticism that they receive. So it really is all over the map, and I think the whole idea is to have fun exploring this sort of stuff. When you outlay $100 to explore a new brand and it doesn't work out and you have to sell it, Most of us can live with that and enjoy the experience, or even just mod the hell out of the guitar and make it something completely different. There's a whole new market now that didn't exist, let's say 30, 40 years ago, of people that are willing to take on these things as projects and go into the purchase expecting precisely that, which is not what we had, certainly at the lay level a few years ago. So it's interesting that the biases are shifting a little bit. You still got a lot of people holding on to sort of a 20-year-old paradigm. They parrot the same lines over and over again. And every once in a while they jump into my comments and they make these blanket statements about all Chinese guitars being junk or all companies being the same. I try to be polite in a response as to why I don't agree with them. But a lot of times it's just because they're holding on to a conception that's convenient for them, or they just haven't updated their knowledge base. And we all learn at different rates, so that's to be expected. But anyway, I wanted to thank you for your responses on that, for sharing your experiences, and it's always fun to read. And I really enjoy hearing back from people who repair a lot of guitars, mod a lot of guitars, or even people who have shops or do repair for a living, or makers or luthiers and stuff like that. It's always great to hear your stories and your opinions as well. So keep them coming. All right, folks. See you on the next one.